gone beyond its limits is in deciding to protect us from ourselves. Isn't that interesting? Government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives. Government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. Governments tend not to solve problems, only to rearrange them. Very interesting. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and call up Representative Norman Sanders and have him introduce our keynote speaker. Norm? Oops.
I promised that I would be brief and not divulge any caucus secrets. I first met Tom Tillis in Greenville in the spring of 2010. He had made the trip down from Charlotte to talk with me and several other Republican candidates who were running for the North Carolina House, to come and offer any assistance that we might need to win those seats. He brought with him a lot of wisdom and a lot of encouragement. And I think, Mr. Speaker, if I'm not sure, that most of the people that were sitting around the table that day in that room in Greenville won their seats. 2010, for only the second time in history, Republicans held the majority in the House of Representatives after the election that year. For good measure, we also took the Senate. What we found out later was we should have taken the governor's mansion too. We won't make that same mistake again. 66 Republicans in Raleigh on January the 26th. One unaffiliated, who, by the way, sometime during the year we changed him from an unaffiliated to a Republican. 53 Democrats, still in shock as to what had happened, and I don't think they figured it out for the whole 6 months we were in Raleigh. But out of that 66 Republicans, there were 23 in the freshman class. I think the largest freshman class that has ever been in the North Carolina House at one time. Republicans came to Raleigh that year in January, really excited. In fact, if you met them in the hall, you could see their eyes were glazed over. They had finally gotten to move from the back of the House floor to the front. They had finally gotten to choose some of the bigger offices. They had finally gotten to sit on the committees as chair, not just as filling seats. The bet in Raleigh, when we first got there, was that our caucus wouldn't last more than 30 days. Because as all good Republicans, we would probably end up infighting. We would probably end up making enemies out of what previously were our friends. So they figured, the press and the Democrats figured, if they would just hold still, just not move too quick and not provoke us too much, that before long we would divide among ourselves and they could come back in and take charge again. Well, that didn't happen. Because the first thing that we did when we were sworn in was to elect a speaker. A speaker that I'm proud of and very glad that he's here with us tonight. Tom Tillis emerged to fill that position. By the end of that first session, everyone in our caucus, every Republican knew that we had made the right choice by choosing this man to lead us. He was tested, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone be as calm as Speaker Tillis in the face of some pretty bad talk that was going on about what we were doing. Because we single-handedly came to Raleigh and destroyed the state of North Carolina. I'm surprised that any of you are still here. I don't know why you haven't moved to Virginia or because we totally destroyed our state. He was tested, he was tried, and through it all, he displayed a professionalism that I just marvel at. Because I don't know how you can go and be civil to a man on the House floor, who is just, that man had just left the press conference and called you some pretty ugly things, but he could do it. Calm, collected, courteous to even those who tried to provoke him, and there was more than one time that somebody tried to provoke him into doing something that he would later regret. The advantage of our 67 votes gave us the opportunity to change the direction of North Carolina forever. One thing that I know from being inside the caucus, being inside, listening to the day-to-day discussions that we would have as Republicans, and let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you know how we Republicans are, and to keep 67 Republicans in line for a whole 6 months, it's a remarkable feat. We tend to be pretty independent people. But the Speaker tells us was able to do that. We had a leader who said to us, don't do as I tell you to do as I show you. So we never went into a caucus meeting where we were told how to vote. I know that may have been done in the past, but it was not done. The Republicans got to Raleigh and took control of the North Carolina House. The only thing that we were ever told on every vote was that if the caucus did indeed take a position, and that we were not going to be able to vote for that position, just to let our caucus know so that we wouldn't be embarrassed on the floor of the House when the vote came. And I think we did pretty well in that. Speaker Tillis tells it like it is, even when the microphones are open. I have come to admire this man. I have come to value his opinion. And most of all, I have come to trust the decisions that he makes and the leadership that he so displays in the North Carolina House. It is my pleasure to present to this group tonight the Speaker of the North Carolina House, the Honorable Tom Tillis.
And thank you, Norman. I'm going to miss you. You all have no idea what a wonderful service, or hopefully you do, know what a wonderful service Norman has done in his freshman term in the House. I'm sad to see him go, and I wish him the very best. It'll be good to have a friend over in the Senate. And Senator Preston, I was talking with a gentleman earlier with Senator Preston, and I hate to see her go because there's nuts over there in the Senate. She's not one of them. She's actually just a very calming, you all know, I mean, your heart rate goes down just when you're in close proximity to her. She's a very calm, methodical, respectful person, and something that you look at and every member, but very few of them can consistently do what every time I've ever had an interaction with Senator Preston has done. She's impressed me, and she's a wonderful asset to this region. You know, when I started, after we got out of the legislative session last year, I've done something that I'm told hasn't been done before, at least with the House Speaker. I decided that we'd go on the road and that we would hold town hall meetings. The first town hall meeting I held was right here. Just right down the street, actually. And the reason I wanted to do that is for the first time in 140 years, the control of the House went from largely Democratic control to Republican control. In fact, you're looking at only the second Republican Speaker of the House in the history of North Carolina. And I felt pretty strongly that we needed to go out there and not only tell people what we're doing, but defend our actions. And defend and communicate the direction that we wanted to take the state. And this really was ground zero. This is the first one that we did. And we invited all takers. Anybody that would want to come in and ask us a question, as a matter of fact, I always make it a point to try and choose the people who are, obviously I have protesters from time to time, and I always try to make it a point to ask the protesters first, or people whose body language would suggest they're probably not on board with us. And the most amazing thing has happened. in over 40 of these town hall meetings, an average of about 100, 110 in each of the meetings. There's some 4,000 people. Every single time that we go into these town hall meetings, we gain ground. People that think that they're opposed to us actually come up afterwards and said, I had no earthly idea what you all did. I had no idea that you had the shortest long session since 1973. I had no idea that you balanced the budget and overrode a gubernatorial veto in record time. I had no idea that you passed medical malpractice reform, regulatory reform, tort reform, workers' compensation reform, allowed $1.5 billion in taxes to be sunset, and a raft of other things, most of which is not even covered in the press, but you did that in 83 legislative days. The shortest session since 1976. We had this little added complexity this year that you don't normally have, and that was redistricting. So that was in the midst of all the complexity that goes along with redistricting. And I'm here and very proud to report that our redistricting plans were approved by President Barack Obama's Department of Justice faster than any redistricting plan since the Voting Rights Act was implemented in 1965. And now we've had two hearings in court, and in both cases, the three-panel judge, which is composed of 2 Democrat judges and one Republican judge, have decided favorably in every case with the Republican plans. And I know that we're going to be running those this year. There may be adjustments next year that we have to deal with, although it's unlikely. And all that was done in the midst of all this change. And every time we communicate the message, I think more and more people get on board. Now, along the way, we've taken a lot of hits, and Norman knows that. I know Gene knows it, because the establishment out there still hasn't figured out that we won. They still haven't figured out that they're not in charge, and they really haven't figured out that we're going to be in charge for the next decade. There's been a lot of funny moments, so I don't want to make this too heavy. I just want to tell you that our record speaks for itself. In fact, I was at a press conference about a month or so back, and I had one of the reporters ask me, aren't you frustrated? Are you frustrated with the gubernatorial vetoes? I said, well, you know we overrode 7. I said, not only am I not frustrated, I'm glad that the Democratic majority is giving us very clear and sharp contrast between what Republicans want to do for this state and what Democrats want to do to this state. And I'm glad that the governor doesn't think that we should live within our means and have a balanced budget. And we do, and we prevail. I'm glad that the governor thinks that medical malpractice should continue down the path that we're going at the expense of health care outcomes and at the expense of the cost of health care. She vetoed it, we overrode it. I'm glad that the governor thinks that the regulatory bodies across this state have no obligation to the legislature and to those they're regulating to provide a business case, a rational basis for exceeding federal standards. We think it's wrong, she thinks it's right, and we overrode it. In fact, over a 2-day period, 30 hours, July 25th and 26th, we overrode 5 gubernatorial vetoes over a 30-hour period. And you could have there was no oxygen left on the left-hand side of the chamber. It was like, what's happening here? It's, well, we're winning. But then I have to talk a little bit about this, which I think is really remarkable. What you hear in the press is all this partisan bickering, right? I was there for 4 years before I was sworn in as Speaker last year on January the 26th. For 4 years, I was in the minority. I was in the back row. I was actually in seat like 118. You can only have 1 or 2 more. There's only 120 in there, so they kept me in the back. But never, in my experience as a freshman, and then my experience as the whip in the last term, ever, did I have a Democratic leader come to me and say, how do we reach across the aisle and work on issues for the good of everybody in North Carolina? Never. Not once. We come into control, we reach across the aisle, and we've actually proven that our message and our strategy can be so compelling that Democrat members join with us to override the Democratic government. It's never happened in the history of North Carolina. And they're saying it's bipartisanship and it's gridlock. 7 times we've convinced Democratic members to vote against their Democratic governor for the good of this state. Now I want to back up and talk about those 5, actually as many as 10 or 12 members on different issues. Ladies and gentlemen, we do want to be the party that reaches across the aisle for people who have like-minded, philosophically consistent ideas like us. We don't want to be guilty of what the Democrats have done in the past and ignore the minority just because we can. We want to be the party that gets things done. And I want to tell you, those members that have voted with us on these veto overrides, these Democratic Party members, deserve a measure of respect from us, because they've actually done something that I think is extraordinary. To actually tell their party members that I'm going to set politics aside, I'm going to embrace principle, good principle when I see it, and we're going to do the right thing. That is the leadership that this legislature has brought into North Carolina. It's also the leadership that democratized the permanent rules. For the first time in nearly a century, the rules that govern the House got 120 to nothing vote. 120 to nothing vote on the permanent rules. You know why? Because every rule change we made benefited the minority. We decided that the things that we had always complained about, we thought were unfair, when we got in the majority, we were going to change them. We've actually appointed Democrats to certain chair positions. Why? Because we want them to feel like they're engaged in it, and they're helping us get to the right outcomes. Time after time after time we've done this. How many of you have seen those reports in the press?
No.
Are you a member of the press? Well, I was about to apologize in advance. But you know, the fact of the matter is, I got in trouble about a month ago because I did 2 things that was kind of fun, because y'all got to help me get the word out. One thing I did, I don't know, it was about probably a month ago, I put a post out on Facebook, and I said, you know what, I've decided most of the liberal press and the bloggers are a lot like roadkill. You don't want to look at it, you ultimately do, and then you regret it. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't help get the message out, then we're not going to get the hearts and minds of people. But I believe we can if we just do nothing more and say, do you know what they did last year in the House and Senate? The other thing I did was about 3 weeks ago, and it was after I thought the timing was right. I live in Congresswoman Sue Myrick's district, and she had just announced her resignation. So a lot of people had speculated that I was going to run for Congress. I had no interest in running for Congress, but I used the opportunity to create just a 3-sentence paragraph, and it was a letter, an email, and it said, my letter of resignation. And I sent it to about 3,000 people, and I posted a link on Facebook, and it just said, my letter of resignation. Posted on Facebook. And if you clicked on the email, you would have seen all I said was, I have resigned myself to having to deal with liberal press, and unless we figure out a way to get a message out, that's all I did. Here's the funny thing. 2 people in the mainstream press in Charlotte had it on their banner on broadcast news, Tillis announces resignation. So why do I tell you that story? Because we've got to get the message out. We've got to let people know all the good things that we've done and all the good things that we'll do when we come back. We've got to get the message out to folks like you. I bet you I don't want to do a show of hands because it hurt my feelings, but I'm sure there are people in this room that's been mad at me for one reason or another over the last years. We've had to make very difficult choices, whether it's about redistricting, whether it's about various policy matters, what we can do and cannot do. But we've got to get the message out to our folks too. This team is working well. And this was in our rookie season. This was the first time we've been in control of the House and Senate in 140 years. Now we come back in 2013 with experience, with the access to staff and resources, and we will do extraordinary things. I'll tell you a couple of other things, though, that I'll finish on. One of them is the governor. We need Pat McCrory in the worst way.
Yeah.
The governor's race is critically important. Pat and I are good friends. We come from the same neck of the woods. In fact, I was telling a story at the table I was eating with this a few minutes ago. We, about every 2 weeks, Senator Berger and I would meet with Governor Perdue, trying to find things we could work together on. They're pretty short meetings, but we were having breakfast, And the Governor of Purdue had asked one of my House members who was joining me, I was sitting right next to her, to say the prayer before we had breakfast. And as immediately as he was saying the prayer, my phone went off. And I grabbed it real quick to turn off the ringer, but it was still vibrating. So after the prayer was over, it was still ringing, and she said, well, I guess that's God calling. And I pulled the phone out, and in big caller ID, it said Pat McCory. I said, I'm going to tell him you called him that. So, I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to go work with Governor Purdue, but I know I can work with Pat McCory. Pat McCory has worked tirelessly. People, last year, when we were running across the state, year before last, trying to get the House and Senate in power, he was everywhere. He was campaigning for us, and now we owe it to him to campaign for him and have that trifecta that we need. But we also need some work in the Supreme Court. How many of you are familiar with who, what's the stake for the Supreme Court this year? How many of you know the name of the justice that we absolutely must get reelected? Newby. Okay, y'all remember, repeat after me, Scooby-Dooby, vote for Newby. His son came up with that. Ladies and gentlemen, when I mean trifecta, I mean that we have the opportunity to maintain the majority in the House and Senate, to maintain the majority on the Supreme Court, and to have a Republican governor to work with. And with that, we can literally change the course of North Carolina history forever. And every one of you can play a role. I know there's a lot of people here that are out in the ground game. You're working tirelessly. You're either party operatives or you're helping out our candidates. We need to get out and raise money. President Obama already has some 50 offices staffed at different levels across this state. He's going to spend over $75 million. We cannot let President Obama carry this state. We cannot. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with this to kind of bring it a little bit closer to home. We're in the primary season. There are folks in this room that are running against each other. There are folks in this room that are pulling for one presidential candidate or another. What we need to understand is that this is the primary season and it's a natural part of the process. But the day after primary is the day that we line up behind whoever wins that primary. And if we do that with the same discipline that we did in 2010, I have no doubt that Barack Obama will not carry this state. And I have no doubt that we will come back as the majority in the House and Senate. And I have no doubt that Pat McCory will be the governor and Paul Newby will join the 4 other justices to lead a conservative Supreme Court. And for those of you who have been involved in the past, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart what you've done, what you've allowed us to do for you. And for those of you who haven't gotten involved before, please get involved in a way, in every possible way you can, with your mind, understand what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish here, with your mouth by explaining it to other people, and if you have the capability, with your money, because we must raise the money that's necessary to compete in what will be one of the most important elections in our lifetime, until 2014, which will be the next most important election. Every election is important when a conservative or a liberal path is at stake. This is a very, very important election, but they all will be. I want to thank folks in Craven County. They have been very hospitable to me. This is my 3rd time here, I guess, since August. I'll be back again in April, and I'll be back many other times. You all have a wonderful reputation. This room is amazing. I get to go to a lot of events. Few have this kind of a turnout. It's wonderful to see. I hope to see more across the state. I hope you'll pray for us. I hope you'll help us become better leaders. I hope that you'll exercise patience, and also hope that if you ever wonder what I'm doing as the Speaker of the House or any of my members, you will pick up the phone and call me. John Locke, my favorite quote, is to prejudge other men's notions before we've looked into them is not to show their darkness, but to put out our own eyes. Before you prejudge what we're doing, please call us. Let us explain things. Let us tell you the bigger picture that we have to operate in, or sometimes the compromises that we must make to move forward. And I think most of the time you'll leave feeling respected. Maybe sometimes you'll even change your opinion. But to all the candidates, congratulations in your choice to run. keep it as clean as you can. To all the elected officials in the room, thank you for what you do. It's a task that you can only do if you have fire in your belly and you love it, and I'm sure that you do. And to those of you out there who have never gotten involved before, I'm going to thank you in advance, because I know that the day after the election, you're going to be able to look in the mirror and say that you had a role to play in what we must do this November. So thank you very much for your time tonight. God bless every one of you, and God bless America.
Speaker Tillis, thank you again. I can testify that in time, as far as the city goes, we could reach out to the speaker, and he's always been there. He does take phone calls, and he's really working on bettering not only our state, but Eastern North Carolina, and we really appreciate it. You know, they told us back in the day that you couldn't elect anybody in the West because they do nothing for the East, and that is not true. Thank you. Your proof is in the pudding, that somebody will call it. It's helping. Thank you so much. A couple of housekeeping items before we close tonight. In this program booklet you see here, there's advertisements in it. These are people who support our party and support us. So please support them. They have to pay for these ads, so the way they pay for them is by having you as a customer or providing you a service. So please support them. I think it's really important. And we want to thank all of our many sponsors who came out tonight to sponsor this program booklet and to attend this meeting tonight. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Again, get out and support your candidates. It is so important. They need you. If you can make phone calls, flyers, whatever it takes, please help them, because it is so important. It's not easy to get out there. Couple of quotes from Ronald Reagan, and we'll close this evening. He says that each generation goes further than the generation preceding it because it stands on the shoulders of that generation. You will have opportunities beyond anything we've ever known. And he continues by saying, let us be sure that those who come after will say of us in our time, that in our time we did everything that could be done. We finished the race, we kept them free, we kept the faith. Get out there and do the job. Let's elect Republicans, and let's have a season to help Tom Tillis and Senator Berger and all of them have victory in the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and let's take that governor's seat back. Thank you. Have a good night.
Please indulge me for just a minute. I want to thank our friend Alderman. I can still say it should be Alderwoman. But Alderman,
one of the boys.
for everything that she does year after year, helping us host this thing. On behalf of the Republican Party, we'll give you this nice little package.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's just working for the cause. Maybe you probably noticed, but when I first came to North Carolina, there wasn't a two-party system, and my father's family's been involved in the Republican Party in New York State for many, many years, and there were no Republicans, and Ella at the time was a Democrat, and the only way I could vote for her was to change my party. My father didn't speak to me for months because I had to change my party in order to vote with her. And the best day of my life is after she was elected mayor, she went downtown to the Board of Elections with a group of people, and she changed to Republican, and it was a happy day for the Bengal family, and I'm back on track. So thank you all for
Go to the 50-50 real quick. Sabrina, why don't you draw the winning ticket? $179 somebody's getting ready to get.
Okay. Let's see. 118379. 118379.
Nobody wants it on.
There we go. We have a winner. Thank you. And thank you for all the people that volunteer. I'm going to accept this on behalf of all the workers because you all do a lot.
Okay, hold on one second. Gentlemen, I'd like to say something. Go right ahead.
I just would like to say that I would want to donate my half of 50-50 to the campaign of Norman Sanders.
Thank all of you for coming out. And please get out and let's work this year and win this election. Thank you.